Alright, so now I've kind of taken out part half the main shaft, or sorry, the output shaft here. I want to show you all the different components. These are just some bushings, or thrust washers that I took off that go in between the input shaft and output shaft. Now here, what I have in a shot is the synchro assembly. This is a synchro hub, a synchro ring. Or I think actually they call it a synchro ring or blocker ring or something. But this is a synchro hub. This is what goes, if you can look inside, that has splines that hook up with this. Okay, which are the splines that are machined onto the output shaft. This outer part slides over here. If I can get it. There we go. Slides over like that. These springs hold these guys in place, and one spring goes on this side and the other one goes on this other side here. Holds these guys into place. That allows a certain amount, these guys allow a certain amount of slipping of the synchro assembly, and the synchro assembly is what kind of selects gears, and the synchro ring kind of helps that. The important part to note about how synchronizer works is not only these guys right here, but the synchro ring itself in conjunction with the actual gear. Here's, I believe, third gear, and if you can look at this surface right here, it's a conical shape, and then we have the dogs of the gear. If you can see that actually match up with these kind of pieces that stick out on a synchro ring. And if you look at the inside of the synchro ring, that is conical shaped as well, and they kind of fit together. And there's a material on here that acts as a way to bring the actual gear, which rides on these needle bearings right in here. The needle bearings go inside there. They slip over this part of the shaft, so they rotate it independently. But as soon as the shift fork kind of pushes the shift forks parts go in there, they slide this thing backwards like that, along in this direction. It engages the synchro ring. Once it engages the synchro ring, it pushes the synchro ring onto the conical part of the gear. The synchro ring speeds up, which makes the synchro assembly speed up, and because the synchro assembly is attached by the spline to the output shaft, it brings everything into common speed, and that's how gears are selected. Okay, so the gears rotate independently. Here's second or first gear, and that's rotating independently as I hold the shaft. That has a needle bearing as well. This is second gear right here. But once this synchro ring goes on top of there, it speeds up this gear to come into speed with the output shaft, and that's your transmission of power. Okay, so that's how that works, and we can give a little demonstration. I don't know if I can do it by one hand here to select first gear, how it slides in actually. So I don't drop this, but here's I'll rotate this thing around and it should snap in at some point. There we go. So that's it selected. What you're seeing there is a synchro that has a reverse gear attached to it, and I've just selected the first gear with the synchro, and you can see kind of the synchro hub right there where the spline's where my finger's at, and here's the synchro ring. This would be getting second gear, the synchro ring that's popping up and down, but now I have first gear selected, and I can just bring that out somehow. I can just slide it out. There we go, it slides out, and then that's neutral essentially. So that's just a closer look at how this thing works, and I'm trying to disassemble this thing so that as soon as I pick it up I just put it on here. Alright, so now I disassembled the input-output shaft. On this side, this was where third gear, second gear were, with all the synchros, and that stuff's all along there. Okay. And then this is the synchro hub, which is pressed onto the shaft, main shaft. And here's first gear. That's fifth gear. This hangs out of the box. It's a bearing. Needle bearings and everything associated. But one thing I wanted to show you was, oh, and this is a speedo gear. That plastic bit. That was hard to get off. One thing I wanted to show you though were the synchros for first and second. Here's the first and second synchro. Here's the synchro ring. Here's the synchro blocker ring. And the gear is over here for second. Sorry. But what happens is there's kind of an intermediate step. There's this guy. Oops. Oh, how does this go? I forget, I have this all in order. I shouldn't muck with it. But essentially, this goes into here, like that. And this goes over there. So essentially, we have this goes to the synchronizer in here, like that. Then we have this intermediate cone that has fibers or whatever friction material that's on there to work with the synchronizer, and then we have this cone that hooks up with the gear, okay, which is different from third and fourth gear, where the gear actually has a cone cut into it, and it just goes on like that on the back of this synchro. Of course, the synchro ring is conical shape. There's no intermediate cone. That's about it. As far as I can tell from my Ford racing kit, these second or third gear and second gear needle bearings are changed. Here's the first gear needles. I don't know if I have these in the kit, if they're changed at all. And if you guys are dismantling a Ford unit, a T5, or any sort of T5 actually, I made the mistake at thinking that this synchro hub will prise off, just like this guy did, from here, okay, on this spline. But it doesn't. It's permanently pressed onto the shaft, as it were. So I was pulling it, it wasn't moving, and I was banging it on the ground. Here you can see the indentation in my aluminum plate I actually used to set up some other thing. But I soon figured out that fifth gear and first gear removed from the long way off the main shaft, and I just tapped them a few times on here, and it came pretty loose fairly quickly, so I wasted a bunch of time doing that. Just so you know, I didn't read the instructions. You might want to read the instructions carefully before you start. I was kind of gung-ho today, so. But anyway, this is all the main shaft disassembled. Okay?
Okay, last attempt. Anyway, what I wanted to mention here in this sort of correction, or the corrections that I do on these series of videos, is that I noticed that there was perhaps a slight error in the explanation this time, and what I was doing in around the 3-minute mark. When I was explaining how the synchronizer works, alright, in conjunction with, you know, selecting a gear, I noticed an error, okay? What happens is that synchro ring, okay, which is the piece that slides on the synchro hub, gets pushed onto the blocking ring, which has clutch teeth that match kind of splines cut into the synchro ring, alright? And when the clutch teeth of the blocking ring get engaged with the synchro ring, the friction material on the cone side of the blocking ring allows the gear itself, that again is connected via this blocking ring and the friction on the cone side of the blocking ring. They made up those two cones. Here's the cone of the cone of the gear, back cone side of the blocking ring, they have friction, okay? And when the synchronizer is hooked up with the blocking ring, the friction on the cone side of the blocking ring brings the actual gear up to speed with the synchronizer. The synchronizer itself is connected to the output shaft, either via the splines I showed you, or around the probably 5-6 minute mark you'll see me show you how one of the hubs is actually pressed on. Actually the synchro hub for the second gear synchronizer, that's actually pressed onto the output shaft. Those are connected to the output shaft. The output shaft is connected to the rear wheels via the drive shaft, the differential, and half shafts, or axles or whatever. Okay, so that's always going to be some set speed. All right, and we always have to remember that everything else, the lay shaft, is spinning at a speed that is determined by the idle speed and the gear reduction between the input shaft and the lay shaft. All right, so you have an idle speed from the engine, and the input shaft is connected to the output shaft via the lay shaft. The input shaft and output shaft are able to spin independently of one another, and you should have seen why that is in one of the previous videos, I think video 2 or 3. Okay, and because of that, and because also the gears themselves on the output shaft ride on needle bearings, they're able to spin independently, as you'll see, of the output shaft. So when a gear is selected, when all that stuff happens that I just explained, it is the actual gear that comes up to the speed with the output shaft, not the other way around. All right, I just want to keep that in mind. The gear is either going to be spinning too fast or too slow. All right, and the output shaft is going to be running at a constant speed, and it's the job of the synchronizer and the blocking ring and stuff like that, and all the friction material that goes in there. It's its job to bring everything up to common speed. By the way, these blocking rings, I don't know if I mentioned in a later video, but these blocking rings are part of the reason why a synchromesh transmission doesn't shift as smoothly as it used to, or ultimately perhaps why you can't select a gear at all. Alright, so that's one of the reasons why I was actually rebuilding this transmission. But I just wanted to make that quick mention because I don't like putting out these videos knowing that there are several errors in there, and I don't like sending these out with errors. Perhaps I just made another error again. If I've made another error again, please let me know. Put it in the comments below. I haven't gotten any comments yet to any videos. I don't know if I'll read them actually, but you can certainly comment, and I'd like to hear other people's opinions. I'm not certainly an expert, but I just want to put this out there for everybody. Okay, so yeah, that's it for this correction, and stay tuned for more videos.